to start, can I have you guys say and spell your names?
Janee Farrar, Janee, accent on the first E. Farrar, Farrar.
Ben Farrar, BenFarrar.
Awesome. Today is Friday, September 9th, 2022. We are at Forgotten Road Ales in Graham, North Carolina. I'm Erin Larimore, here doing an interview for the Well-Crafted NC project. So to start, how about y'all tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from and what road brought you here?
Go for it. The forgotten one. Bad joke.
What was the question again? About myself? So I'm the co-founder, brewer, blender, all things Forgotten Road Ales. Previous to this, I worked in convenience stores and distribution, and also served 10 years in the Marine Corps as a combat engineer. And that's where I kind of started all this, was there. So I grew up in Southern Virginia, lived in Pennsylvania for a while, and then moved down to North Carolina 8 years ago now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about you?
That was short and sweet. Mine's always going to be longer. My background is in marketing. I have a degree in communications from Penn State. From Pennsylvania. Ben moved to Pennsylvania and met me years ago, years ago. And 5 years after that, we moved here to North Carolina. We both worked for Sheetz, and they were building a distribution center. Ben ran half of that, and I worked in marketing. I worked in food and beverage R&D in the marketing department, and took a different job to transfer here. But we both love beer. Like when we went on our first date, the one thing that we both really kind of bonded over was that we didn't get a Bud Light. I was like, okay, I can hang out with this guy. So our love of beer kind of grew together and somehow landed us right here where we are. And that's a long story, and I can be pretty long-winded. So I can expand, or I can, you can
be as long-winded as you want. We will keep recording as long as you want to chat. So, I mean, there's a lot of folks who don't like Bud Light, but they don't all get to this point where they're owning and operating a brewery. How did y'all get from bonding over beer to now having a brewery?
So on my second deployment, the workup, was at a bar drinking with some of the Marines I was with, and we were drinking Fat Tire, and through that, we drank the bar out of Fat Tire. It was Christmas Eve, and we started talking about making beer and craft beer, because at that point, this was 2007, late 2007. So the craft beer boom was kind of really starting to gain speed. So through that conversation, my buddy was telling me that his roommate made beer at home, and I was like, that's a cool thing. And I was today years old when I realized that at that point. I was like, all right. So on that deployment, I decided I was gonna get an understanding of how to make beer at home. So I did. So I'd have people send me magazines. If I could get on the internet, I'd do a little reading. Came home from that, moved to Pennsylvania in 2009, and then started homebrewing. So homebrewed, went on another deployment, came back from that, sent myself to a homebrewing school, bought a really nice setup to homebrew, where there's some breweries now, that's what they open with, which we don't have here anymore, but we still own it. It's in a storage unit somewhere. So just kept homebrewing. We moved down here. And even when we lived in Pennsylvania, we talked a little bit about hey, that'd be a cool place to open a brewery, because at that point there was 2,200 breweries versus the 9,000 we have today. So we looked, and then ended up moving down here. And as we moved down here, we started barrel aging beers, which the camera can't see all of the barrels behind behind the camera.
We were barrel aging them in our house.
So we were barrel aging at home.
So we had the biggest barrel.
Second largest barrel program in Alamance County.
Just in our house.
So we were doing some barrel aged beers. We got to the point where it was like, okay, like let's make this a business. So Janee shifted gears to get in the industry, doing some stuff with a couple different companies. I kept brewing. We basically started building the brand then. So we had our logo well before we even had our LLC for the brewery. But we had T-shirts. We'd give beer out. We had it on Untapped, which is an app to rate beers, so that just that information was there for people. We would give to people that we knew would share with other people, and then that just continued to snowball to full-blown brewery. So,
Yeah, so you talked about the logo and the logo coming first. Can you talk a little bit about the process that went into kind of thinking through the logo or the name?
So the logo, I don't even know if it's close to kind of what I had in my head, and I don't know what Janee had in her head at that point.
It's close.
I think it was a little not more of my direction, but like here's kind of what I was thinking of the concept. But the name to go with the logo, we kind of just threw some stuff around is more for kind of just meaning a loose metaphor for the road that veterans take when they come home. People forgetting about the path that they're on, just that forgotten way that they're traveling, whether they were on deployments, whether they were just getting out of active duty. And we just kind of wanted to remind people of that. Some people asked, or when they came in, just something. And also just to give somewhere people could come. Whether they be veterans, whether they're not veterans, anyone that just kind of needs someone to talk to, hey, let's be that spot. But that's really the name, kind of back to the logo. It was just back and forth. We wanted to incorporate military. It was the question of how do we do that without just being a bunch of flags and everything else. So we worked with an artist that we liked his work, went round and round and round with him, and kind of to the point where he was about to quit, and it was like, no, you're almost there. Like, I literally cut out printouts where he had sent him and was like, you're saying this isn't gonna work here, like this. And then he just like regurgitated everything. It was just like thing after thing, and it was truly like the next logo he sent, I think, is that logo.
Yeah.
And then he sends like 3 more pages of logos. Just stop sending logos. Stop. Like you got
You
it.
landed
You nailed it. Like that. It's not quite what I thought we were gonna have, but that's what we want. Like that is it right there. So to play on my last rank as staff sergeant, we took out one of the chevrons. We modernized the rifle to the M4, which I carried 2 of my 3 deployments. And then we added a mash paddle, which most people question if I was a Navy SEAL. It's just what we started the grain with. And it also makes a really neat smiley face that most people don't realize. But once you see it, you don't unsee it.
Yeah.
So when people
didn't ask
ask
for that,
yeah,
but
when people ask like, what are the
it
guns
exists.
for? It's like, well, how is she going to make the eyes of the smiley face?
I gotta admit, I had never.
We didn't. We had it for 2 years.
So,
We were doing market research?
So before we opened, we did market research on the brand because we know that like guns in general can be somewhat divisive. We wanted to see if this exists in a military style situation, if people will recognize that and not say that we're something that we're not, or we're about something that we're not. We wanted to be welcoming to everyone, except for, I don't know if I can swear on this, but
You can.
bleep. If not, we're welcoming to anyone but assholes. There's one rule here: no assholes allowed, except me and Ben. We're allowed. But
It's not a bad rule to have.
no, them's the rules. But we did some brand studies on. It was more around. Some of them were about our beer labeling and the bottle, which I don't think. Yeah, we do have one of the waxed bottles back here. So it has the brand on the top, the emblem, which is broken apart from our full logo. And we did a brand study on that. And then we also got feedback from brewers in the industry. We got feedback from students at Elon University on the logo, and all of it was very positive, a lot better than we thought. Not a lot there. I think there were like 3 in the conclusive, maybe like in the conclusive set of data that was like between 350 and 500 comments, broken down different ways, determined by how you look at it. And I think there were like 3 people that were like, guns, bad, whatever. Everyone else received it really positively. But it was in that research that someone said, oh, I like the smiley face. And we were like, what? So thanks to our graphic designer who gifted us with that little gem, be it on purpose or not.
I was going to ask if the graphic designer knew there was a smiley face.
We've actually never asked him. And where Ben said he was about ready to quit a couple times, we very much usually know exactly what we want. I'm thankful for the graphic designer that we work with now that does our labels, because generally we have an idea in our heads and we say with like this and this. I like to provide as much direction to people as I can so that it's not confusing. And her first feedback to us was, wow, you really know what you want. I appreciate this. Which, when you're working with an artist, is not always the case. Sometimes they do want to do their own thing, which I think was very much the case of the awesome guy who did our logo and worked really hard on it. I think he was thinking, wow, you're really beating me up over this. I don't know that I want to work with you. I was like, let's just hop on the phone. We hopped on the phone. I was like, I'm just a little direct with, that's me as a human. But
the word is micromanager.
No, that is not it at all. Maybe a touch.
So when it came time to open the brewery, how did you get to this spot? Were there other spots you looked at, other places you looked at, and what kind of led you, not just like to Graham, but physically this spot?
So we looked, once we got to North Carolina, we always kind of kept an eye open. So we looked everywhere. We looked in downtown Burlington. We looked in downtown Mebane. We looked south of this area in Graham, and that's kind of what made us realize a little bit about Graham. We looked at a building in Court Square in downtown Graham that's now a custard shop. We dodged a bullet on that one. I'll just leave it at that.
We looked in Graham, Elon, Mebane, and Burlington, basically.
Elon, we looked in Jamestown. We threw around Greensboro. I mean, anywhere that at the time there was no brewery, so we knew. Well, there was one south of us here, and then there was Mystery over in Hillsboro at that point in time. So we knew this area needed a brewery. We just didn't know where. So we looked. Some of it was buildings were too big. Some of it was just. There was one in Burlington. It was like, you can't cut my concrete floors. It's like, well, that I can't. Sorry, I'm gonna replace it. But hey, and then we met someone through helping out an art event.
Yeah.
That we had looked at that building also where the art event was. We poured some homebrew there and gave it away. And through that, we were meeting with a person talking about some other stuff. And we were at another local bar, Fitzgerald Faulkner's, and it's an awesome little craft cocktail speakeasy, cocktail haunt, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
And we were leaving, and the traffic flow took us past here, and I said that'd be a really cool place to have a brewery. At that point in time, it was a detailing shop. It was 2 or 3 weeks later, we drove by after having cocktails, and I said, drive back around a lot. There's something closed or removed on the window. So we drove by, and down in the very little corner is like call for lease, like a secondary thought. Because come to find out later, that's literally what it was. The guy that was leasing the place had put up the thing saying he was closing, and the landlord was like, hey, can you just write for lease on there and put my number on there?
He did not even come here. He left the key in the mailbox for him. So our landlord's in Greensboro, and he has a lot of other projects going on. So we're one weird anomaly in like the 48 or some properties that he owns. So most of them are like C-stores or gas stations, which is why he owned this property. And thankfully, the city ordinance won't allow a gas station to be on this property. So we were kind of really saved at one point when he came here to show us the building, and he was like, yeah, I kind of really just want to turn it into a convenience store. And gas station. Because he said gas station instead of convenience store, it's the saving grace that saved us. Someone who was here with us said, oh, there's an ordinance in the city that prohibits that. I'll just call the city planner so that you know. And it verified that. So that is how we ended up being able to get the building, because the landlord had thought, oh, my project I wanted to do with a gas station can't happen. Whereas he could have put a a C-store at that point in time.
Yeah.
But
So the lot had stayed vacant for 15, 20 years with a bunch of mixed things that were going to go on it, and nothing ever did other than basically the 2 years before us, the detail shop. When we got the lease of the building, we ended up adding one of the bays of the garage. We ripped out old bathrooms, we ripped out all the nastiness that was in here to basically the bare bones of the building, including the bathrooms, and then worked with a super old architect that still did everything with pencil to draw through stuff. I think there's a picture out there of us like literally like drawing some of the plans outside,
Yeah.
like adjusting so he can go do the professional part of it. And then a mix of the demo was us, and we use a local general contractor that we now enjoy seeing. We didn't at the time.
sorry,
But-
Jensen.
So we did all the planning of what's in here. We didn't go through any third parties other than what we had to for like architecture and whatnot, and then our GC. But yeah, so
Graham really, like the night that we fell in love with Graham, it was kind of last on our list of those 4 main places we were looking, and that night that we fell in love with Graham, we were at Fitz and Faulkner, and just, it was kind of the perfect storm of a night where someone else was sitting there was like, I had your homebrew and it's amazing and you guys need to come to Graham, and this person's going to be here in 10 minutes and you should talk to them, and then there's this art show, and then we ended up at Maple Street Tavern, which we affectionately refer to as a dive bar. And I'm from Pennsylvania, and every bar there is a dive bar. I had been here for, I don't know, 5 years at that point, and hadn't found a dive bar that felt like home to me in a weird way. And it just, we were there, and it was the perfect night. So we were like, it's going to be Graham. We're not looking anywhere else. That's where we're going to look. And to this day, even the little snippet of our story on the back of our bottles that are the waxed top bottles talks about the night that we fell in love with Graham. It's been a while since I've read the copy, but it talks about the night that we fell in love with Graham, and then it's always been here, and this feels more like home to us than anywhere. So
Yeah. So when you were first going to open, were there, you were pretty much pioneers here in town. Were there issues that y'all came across or challenges that you faced, especially with opening and licensing and planning, that type of thing?
Licensing and planning mostly went well. Like I think we got our TTB, which is our federal brewer's permit, faster than anyone still to this day that we know of.
22 or 23 days or something like
43
that.
days.
Oh,
43 days.
Yep.
And when we first started looking at breweries, it was like, which was 4 or 5 years before that, it was months. Like,
9 months.
Like 6, 9, 12 months to get a permit. So most of that went easy. Most of the permitting for the building went good. There's always a hiccup and something you don't plan on, which for us was the install of our boiler. We had one issue that we have a holding tank for our wastewater that the city wanted us to do something, so we tried to say, what can we do the cheapest, but that fits their needs and give them the idea versus them coming up with some crazy thing. And there was a little bit of like, you can't do that. It's like, well, why can't you? Same thing as the toilet. It's like, yeah, maybe you can. So we've got that, and that worked fine. And I mean, they worked with us through a lot of things. I think the only what the hell are you talking about was our sidewalk. So we had the city ordinance said we had to install a sidewalk because we were the ones improving the property, and if you didn't have a sidewalk in a certain area, you had to enter one. So that was a fun bad cop situation, and I'm pretty sure that particular city employee who's not here, he's in another city now, probably will never forget that conversation, because I for sure know that he brought people to that meeting that still bring that up when they come in here, and that's been 3.5 years ago now. So it's kind of comical. But even then, they worked with us on that. There's certain things to where it's a little weird of a curvy sidewalk because we didn't want to rip out a bunch of stuff and put a retaining wall in. Other than that, I mean, it's
We didn't run into many issues.
hindsight, they're a great city to work with.
Yeah.
Through the planning, through all of it, most people wanted us here. In all actuality, which is great. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for someone who's unfamiliar with the brewery, how would you describe the mission of Forgotten Road?
I think our mission, so I have a mission statement.
I was just
Staring directly at me.
I was just like,
Yeah, our mission statement has grown and evolved a little bit since we opened, but every time that we talk about it, I think we're doing exactly what we set out to do, and maybe even more, which is really cool. But our mission was to give people great beer that we were proud of, and to make people feel welcome, and to help in some way, to give back, not to use that in a generic sense of the word, but like Ben had said before, we wanted to be a military forward brand without relying on generic military symbolism. So we wanted to be welcoming to those people and not alienate others. But our biggest thing was we wanted to give people great beer, but we also wanted to be the place that hospitality is really important to us. We both have a background in that. And we were both behind the bar before we hired our first employee for 2.5 years. It was just me or Ben when you walked into this place. And oftentimes it would be both of us, even if it wasn't terribly busy, because of the hospitality aspect and because we wanted it to be where, if Ben's having a conversation with a customer and they're really engaged, I can help whoever else while he talks to them. We're not taking tip money from the other person when it goes into the same bank account. But yeah, our mission is to brew really great beer that we're proud of, and to be welcoming to people, make them feel like this place is their home.
Yeah. So let's talk about the opening. When you guys actually opened, when was that, and what do you remember about the opening?
May 11th, 2019 was the grand opening. I remember there being a line out the door, that there were some of our friends had brought camping chairs, and there was a line out the door.
who was the first person? Was it Steve?
It might have been Steve, or it would have been.
He was the first five. We were talking about.
Or it would have been
opening
Steve
earlier.
Daniels.
Well, they were
Steve,
staying together.
one of the Steves, maybe, probably. I remember the first day this kid walks in who we didn't know, who was maybe all of like 22 years old, and was like, I hear you guys brew really great sours and barrel-aged beers. And we were like, what the fuck? Like, we don't even know who this person is, and they've heard about us. And we were today years old when we opened our doors. I loved also, there are some people who want Graham to remain a good old boy's place, and it's not. So you can want things not to change. Reality is things will always change. So it's changing such for the better, even if there are sometimes setbacks. But we didn't really know who would walk in the door. And I remember it just being it was just a welcoming crowd. It was diverse. There were young people, old people, people that had traveled from different places, not just because they were our friends, but because they had heard about us. We knew that we were in a good spot being between the Triad and the Triangle. That is what we wanted. We felt it was underserved. And we're a half mile off I-40 and I-85 off the one exit. So we're in a good position to get a lot of people. But it was just really cool that day. I remember playing some Mac Miller song when we first opened the doors, because I love Mac Miller. And I was like super pumped, but also nervous, and I don't get nervous a lot. Ben hadn't bartended before, ever. So that was fun.
Well, at that point, I had 2 weeks.
Well, we did soft openings, but he did a great job. I really was like, I don't know how he's he's very good at a lot of things. And I was like, I don't know how he's gonna be as a bartender, and he was great. So.
Do you remember what beers you had available when you first opened?
Yeah. We started with 9. So speaking of the beers, the reason we opened when we did is, one, we actually thought we were gonna be open in November of 18. Stupid. Anytime someone now says, hey, we're going to open this date, I'm like, yeah, it's 6 months. And that probably still won't be right. Don't print anything. Don't print your date on anything. We made that mistake on our next spot. We'll see.
Maybe not. Hopefully not. If our lawyers can make magic
So we were
happen.
actually, like, around open, we were trying to be open in November, which then in turn rolled. We were like, we really don't want to do January. And then the boiler happened. And then it was like, okay, we got to make beer. So I left my job in March, right as they got done. And it was like, okay, how many beers do we want to open with? And we were looking at the dates, trying to plan, and it was like, okay, we're brewing, we got beer in tank, how does this taste? And we're still kind of debating on when we're going to open. We hadn't even planned any soft openings. And I think the first 2 batches of beer went straight into barrels just to learn the system. The third was a horribly efficient stout that was called What's in Gunny's Cup that people still ask about and we will never make because it was an accident. It was like a 3.2% stout that was just, it drank like coffee.
Yeah.
We still have people that
People
will
still
ask about
talk
that. It's
about
been 3.5 years.
Accidental beer that can never be replicated.
And
Sorry.
our second beer that went in tank was Ward Street Whip that we haven't made in forever, but that then the next morning went down the drain because it was learning the system and it wasn't good. So brewed that beer on the 4th day of brewing, or the 5th day of brewing, which turned out good. And then we brewed a mix of our sours, which were blackberry, cherry lime, which is okay, and passion fruit mango, which I don't think we've actually made that combo since. People still will ask about that. And we've changed how we do our sours, which is kind of funny. So that was 4 of the first beers. So that
Noodles
was
on my roommate.
Well, I'm getting there. Tell the whole story.
I thought you were
Tell
forgetting
the whole
the
story
beers.
about it now.
Okay.
Well, a little bit. I'm trying to remember something. So that was the first turn of the tank. So during that time frame, we're like, okay, when do we want to open? So at this point, it's late March. And I was like, well, these should be ready in about 2.5 weeks, and then I can brew directly into them again. And if we do some soft openings on these 2 weekends, or if we want to do soft openings first and then go to the brewery, the dates are looking like sometime in May. So our anniversary is also the anniversary of the death of one of my friends that I was in the Marines with for my first deployment. So Grez was killed in 2005 on May 11th. So as we started looking, we realized like that was gonna need to be the Saturday we opened, which that was the first Saturday in 12 years, or the first 11th in 12 years, 10 years, I don't remember.
That you didn't go to Arlington.
But I ended up not going to Arlington because of that, to pay my respects, that I was in country. There was a couple times I was
Yeah,
not.
the one time he wasn't, and I went.
There was a couple times I wasn't.
Well, the one time since I've known you.
Yeah. So through all that planning, we realized, okay, that's kind of ironic that that's going to be our opening day. Because originally, when we thought we were going to be open in November/February, May 11th was going to be what we were going to call Silky's Day, which now is just our anniversary. But with those second turns of the tank, we brewed Noodles of My Roommate, which was a rye IPA. We brewed Call Sign Charlie, which is now our Galaxy Eagle that we actually have on draft now, is a variation of that. A little bit of a tweak and just better knowledge of IPAs. And then, did we open with Silkies? I think we opened with Silkies.
Mm-hmm.
Call Sign Silkies, which we still occasionally do. And we do a double Silkies and a triple Silkies. And then we had Satellite.
Galaxy, no. Just regular Eldorado Satellite?
Eldorado, or something that was a dry hop. Saison, stainless that I think we did 2 batches of. We've never made again because we do them all out of oak now. But that was actually our first 8 beers.
Yeah, and we have the menu hanging up. Our first menu, our first $1, and then the first keg of beer that we sold is hanging tucked away. I like things to look very much in their place here, but we still like to hide little Easter eggs sometimes. So kind of neatly tucked away up toward the ceiling is a copy of our very first menu from that first day. our first dollar and the first cake caller, which was noodles on my roommate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, not long after y'all opened, COVID rolled through. Can you talk a little bit about how that impacted the business?
This interview's done now.
Yeah, that
For better or for worse.
yeah, it definitely, yeah, it was a lot of things. I remember hearing, so we had this gigantic bar crawl. We have one on Halloween, or the Saturday before Halloween, and then we have one the Saturday before St. Patrick's Day. So we had our St. Patty's bar crawl, which was March 14th. March 15th is my birthday. So March 15th, the day after, we always close a little bit earlier than the other bars. We close at 9 o'clock. And we had gotten our asses handed to us because it was at that time, it was just you and me. Yeah.
We had that bar crawl.
We have help?
Yeah,
Okay.
we had friends come help.
So we had some friends
Had
come
to.
help bartend because we had learned after the first bar crawl that we're not superhuman and that it was a really, really big thing. So we had the bar crawl. We went out to celebrate afterward because we were beat up and exhausted, and that may have been our best day of sales at that point in time. We went out to kind of celebrate my birthday twin. Someone else I know who has my birthday was around. We were like, let's go have drinks for our birthday. So Ben and I are in here the morning after on Sunday, bartending. We are not historically hungover bartenders, but that night we were like, whew, that was a night. Let's celebrate. The birthday's tomorrow. So we were feeling it, and we were in here, and it was maybe around, at that point in time we closed at 5 o'clock on Sundays. It was maybe around 2 p.m. that we got word that the state of Ohio was closing their bars.
Ohio or Texas closed the day of the bar crawl. Because as the bar crawl went, it went from this is such a great time to 7 at night. It was this weird feeling starting that I could feel at least.
Yeah.
And then as we rolled in the next day,
we were okay. We were okay the next day. We weren't we had talked about some things, but
yeah, we had talked about some labels. I'd already ordered extra cans at that point because it was something's weird. Something's not right. Let's move some stuff, or let's spend some money that at that point in time we didn't have a ton of, just in case. We don't know, but just in case. Who knows? Because a lot of stuff around shipments was some of the first stuff. Hey, stuff's taking longer. These states aren't letting truckers through and everything. So it's let's get this stuff because we don't know what's going to happen, and not having a clue what was about to happen.
But I remember on that day, it was maybe 2 o'clock, and there was something about bars closing in Ohio or something else that was more structured and evident. And our mood went from, okay, we're a little exhausted, but that bar crawl was great, so we're kind of coming off that high, to literally, we closed the doors at 5 o'clock. My brew dog, Mac, was behind the bar. Ben didn't often sit down and play with Mac, and I just remember him standing back there and kind of sinking down and getting Mac out of his crate or whatever, and just we literally were what do we do if we're homeless?
Well, at that point it was still, we weren't closed yet, so it was
No,
still,
we weren't closed, but Ohio had closed things down, and I was
what do we do if
this could be
this
coming our
happens?
way. Yeah. So, we put everything we have into this. We have a big bank loan that we knew that we could tackle. We knew we were not going to fail. And this was the one thing that no one saw coming, that it was just everything we worked so hard for could go down the drain, and if we don't have enough money to pay our bank loan, and we will lose our house.
So that Monday,
Yeah.
it was kind of business as normal and watching the news. At that point in time, we were not open Monday through Wednesday. So then Tuesday was the actual St. Patrick's Day. So we said, hey, we're going to be open. Here's the time we're going to open. Come hang out, come drink. So at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the governor released saying that everything needed to shut down at 5 for the 2-week time period. And of course, so we're looking at it and it's like, I don't see anything. Like I'm not shutting down. So about 7 that night, they finally posted the order to close down because hindsight, it was Lieutenant Governor was trying to sue him and everything else to keep it from happening. So at that point, we saw it and was like, okay, but we had some regulars in here and we kind of served beer to probably 7:30, 8 o'clock, rolled on out and just said, okay, what are we gonna do? So the next day, we didn't even walk into the brewery that Wednesday because at that point, nothing was open. So we were trying to figure out like, okay, we need to get food for the house because like are they gonna let us go to grocery stores? Because all that was still so fluid. Because they shut bars down Tuesday, and I think they shut everything down Friday or Saturday. So we're like, okay, so we tried to figure that out, and then I think I went and talked to my parents just to say, hey, and because at that point, that's when we were concerned, like, okay, like everything's in this, like do we have the money? We don't have the money to survive on this. At this point in time with our loan, like we could a little bit, but if we can't sell anything, we can't survive. So I talked to my parents, and my dad was nice enough to say, hey, like, don't worry. Like, if you need a couple bucks to get through, a couple $1,000 to get through for your house, don't worry about that. It's like, okay. So that was reassuring. And I mean, we still had some savings ourselves, but it's one of those, how much do we want to keep pouring into a business that we don't know if it's going to, what the world's going to be. Everything's changing. And then that next day we came in and just filled cans. And during filling cans, I also got a call from my accountant saying, hey, here's your tax stuff. Well, that was the first year we were able to actually write off the build out of the building. So the year before, we really didn't get any money. We had to pay money because we had taken on investors. And we just made rookie mistakes around organizing and owning all the ownership. And they did their wonders with that, but then of course came back, hey, here's your tax money, and we're like, all right, cool. We got a big cushion here. This may not be that bad. So of course we filled a bunch of cans at that point off the taps and hand wrote all the labels that we really didn't do a lot of at that point in time. I think we did
beforehand.
Yeah, 4 cases a week maybe, and that first day, that Thursday or Friday, I think that Thursday we filled cans and said we were going to open back up that Friday because we knew we could sell to go. And we sold all but 3 cans that day.
All but one. So the picture that we took had 3 cans in it, and someone had come in right after we took the picture to post and bought 2. So we had 1 can of, I think, El Dorado Satellite left at the end of the day. We busted our butts. We had already had the processes in place by which to fill off of our tap system. We purged with CO2, so we were doing it to the best that we could. We actually were already filling in 16-ounce cans, so we were calling them crowler fills because we didn't intend for them to sit in people's fridges for months on end because, of course, there can be variances. We're not weighing things. Well, we actually at one point were, but we didn't have a canning line at that point in time, but we had some processes in place and we already had labels that we would just hand write all of the information in. So that was good. But yeah, we had 1 can left when we closed that day. And the pictures that I have that I still look at, like that'll pop up in my memories or whatever, I just will get goosebumps when I look at them because you can see a lot from them. Like you can see a lot about like mental health is a really big thing for us that I think some of our customers come in here because we are real and we're genuine, and we do work in an industry that can have negative impacts on people's mental health, and we're aware of that, but we kind of love being the bar that people can come in and just feel like they're our family and they know some of the struggles that we've gone through. And but I'll look back at some of the pictures from that time and be like, oh, that was a really bad place. And people months later would come in, some of our friends, and ask us, or be like, you guys killed it during the pandemic. You guys did like so great. The brewery did. Us as humans, we did not. Like, it was terrible. We're already husband and wife working together. And then, I mean, the pandemic really was like definitely one of the worst times in our entire life, but definitely one of the most formative times that, we came through that and we overcame a lot of other things. Now.
Yeah, so St. Patrick's Day, later that week we started canning, and then we opened back up Memorial Day. Was when we were able to have people. So during that time frame, we worked, and a good friend of ours, Ruben, who still comes in here all the time. He was our first intern. He's still our intern. He's our permanent intern. If you catch him on the right days, our brewmaster. He does elective surgeries, so those were not happening. So he had nothing else to do, so he just came in and just helped, which was a godsend. Because he was into beer, he had helped before, but was just a tremendous help. So
by help, it's not like 6 hours a week either.
We would come in and basically work 18-hour days, sun up, sundown, and normally the sun wasn't up, and then normally the sun was down by the time we left. It just cans running at midnight to get cans from like tap hoppers, which was nice enough to hook us up with cans during that time frame. We still buy cans from. What was the one down at Apex? Another brewery hooked us up with a couple layers of cans. So driving down there, they're still full of cans and selling stuff, and I was like, all right, I'll be back. Just whatever we could until we got our cans. And that was really the only time we kind of came up on a crunch on cans, because that was a big thing with the supply chain. That was really the only time we had an issue with supply chain. Still,
aside from like toilet paper and sanitizer and hand soap.
That just didn't exist.
Production.
That wasn't supply chain. That just didn't exist. But we did that just grind it every single day. And we'd have people that would come in and just kind of want to sit and chat. So they'd kind of like stand off to the side and just hold a conversation. We're looking outside like, we don't want someone to think they're drinking in here. Because someone had reported us that, our now mayor lied and reported that someone was in here drinking. So the cops came to check us out, and I say that because the cop told me that our now mayor did that. We dealt with that. We followed all the rules, went through, just grinded it out, and then finally, Memorial Day happened. It was great, but we even just like slowly opened back up, which was just kind of weird, because it was like, all right, what do we do? How do people react? So we shifted all the chairs and just kept grinding it out. We got to the point during that where we quit handwriting stuff, so we were smart enough to have a graphic designer making some cool labels with our input, so that would save us time. We were selling enough stuff during that that we were able to afford like a labeler that helped us out. We could get cans in bigger bulk, which was nice to save a little bit of money. We brewed a lot more beer during that time frame because we were selling it 16 ounces at a time versus 12 ounces at a time. People supported us, and just whether they wanted to drink or not, they were coming by 6-packs. They'd buy merch during that whole time, and continued for a long time. Really, all of 19 was kind of that way because I guess we had restrictions for all of 19.
Yeah. We had people that would come in. It would be like one person would come in, and he was like, I lost my job and I have my family to take care of. I want to see you guys in the end. And he would buy 1 or 2 cans a week because that's all that he could buy. And we had people that we knew had closets full of Forgotten Rodale's merch. And they came in and bought cases and just snagged fucking shirts to like, this is my kid's gonna wear this to bed. It's oversized. Like, it was hard to hold shit together at all. Like the first 2 weeks, it was like any customer that came in, I would be like teary-eyed and so thankful. I'm still to this day so thankful that those people came in and spent any money that they did, whether they needed stuff or not. There was someone who drove from Raleigh to buy a 4-pack and left a $50 tip. Just awesome things like that over and over again. And the weirdness of like, hey, we built this place to be a bar, and now I have fucking potato chips stacked up on the bar top because we have snacks here, and we have wine bottles there, and it looked like it was just a shell of like what we wanted it to be. It was this retail space.
Some days I miss that though.
I used to a little.
You just knew what you had to do.
Yeah.
In, out, in, out, in,
We
out.
also didn't have a reach-in cooler, but we purchased a lot of assets because of how well we were taken care of during the pandemic. So we were literally from open to close. It was like 2 to 7 every day, but Sundays, because that was our day to, like, we did not rest. But I remember from 2 to 7, it would be Ben and myself at either POS station that we had like sectioned off by our potato chips and bar mats and stuff. And then it would be just a constant revolving door of Ben and myself going in and out of that door to the walk-in to grab the cans. And just every night, like, shit, what are our build tos for tomorrow? Like, we need 500 cans. We closed at 7. We have to fill 500 cans before we open tomorrow. And I literally have pictures on my phone of like some of the build twos on our menus where it's like, 100 cans of this, 40 cans of that. And Ruben would help us. My niece would help us. We'd be handwriting labels. Ben would be filling. Ruben would help fill. But I always remember every night ended with me handwriting rolls of labels at our kitchen table with a glass of bourbon beside me, and my head would be nodding off, and it would be midnight, and I'd be like, okay, I guess I have to wake up at 7 tomorrow. Like, we always woke up at like, we didn't take care of ourselves. It was, we could take care of one thing, and we chose our business because ultimately that would save us. So
we tried to help. We worked with a couple of the other bars that were closed and didn't have a way of doing to go.
Yeah.
To do like guest bartending to make a few bucks. And then of course everything kind of government-wise started coming down the chain, so that didn't last long, but it was hell. They were happy for it. And then as the pandemic went on, I think we both, after we pushed the marriage to the absolute limit of stuff, and not just from the pandemic, it was just, you're going to put stuff together. Well, we had already worked 9 months of frustration together of opening, and then you put us with no one else. That didn't help. So during the pandemic, we also, I think, started to focus more on ourselves. Like we went to where we ate every local restaurant just to try to support them, to go to just like, okay, like we eventually have to go to the grocery store. Like we need to like eat somewhat healthy. Not saying you can't get healthy food. It was just, that wasn't the choice we always made. To where, like, for me, from my military background, I struggled with some with PTSD. So I started doing more counseling with that, just to get my mental state right, because if I didn't, I was going to be a part owner of a brewery that wasn't open because we were ready to murder each other. So that's really the pandemic in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I mean, it was stressful. It was great. We grew our customer base a lot during that time frame because we were willing to do, like we said, pivot, but pivot's not the thing. Like, we were willing to do whatever it took, 1, to stay in business, and 2, to take care of the customer. Like, I was walking to another bar to get a 4-pack, and just talked to the bartender there one day, and some of our regulars was like, hey, are you closed? Like, just meet me at the brewery, I'll go fill. And it was 2 hours later, like 3 other people walked in, and it was people like we knew, and it was like, I'm not gonna turn you away. I mean, like, yeah, I'm a business, but in the same way, it's like, I'm not like you came down here to support me. I'm not gonna turn you away, even though you're like, I can come back tomorrow. No. So sat here for another 2 hours filling growlers for them. But yeah, I mean, I think that's continued to help us. Is a lot of people know that we were willing to try to do whatever we could to take care of them and help them out. Bring food trucks in during that time frame, and just anything to make life a little bit normal. People that wanted to have a mask on, they could wear a mask. If people didn't want to wear a mask, we didn't care. People said, "What's your policy?" We said, "Respect." Like, just show people respect. Like, if someone's standing there with a mask on, don't go stand over top of them. If you don't want to wear one, don't. If you don't like the fact that I have one on for the customers that do have one on, go to Janee. She doesn't have it for medical reasons. Like we provided that option. Like, I didn't want to wear a mask, but I did it for our customers because we have a lot that are nurses, and they were, I don't want to say overly scared, but I mean they saw what we didn't necessarily see, no matter what you think of the pandemic. But yeah, I think that was the pandemic in a nutshell.
Yep.
Did y'all have your outdoor space built out before the pandemic, or was that a result of that?
4 or 5 picnic tables out there.
Yeah.
And the design that we put out there, there's some spacing between that kind of makes these little miniature rooms.
Little alcoves.
Was planned before. It just, we didn't build it. It was, okay, this is this coming year's expansion. And it just worked out perfect for that. So of course we added more seats out there. And we try every year to add something, but we would purposely make sure stuff was kind of separated so people felt comfortable with stuff. And then when the winter hit, you still could only have so many people inside. We added tents out there, which we had built those alcoves so that the tents would fit in, and people would thank us, and it was like, it just worked out. Like, I mean, we're just stupid lucky. I mean, like, we don't even try to be like, oh yeah, we did for you. No, like, it was just what we wanted to do because someone made a comment. They were sitting at one part of the fence that we had, and they're like, it's really nice over here because there's a little bit of shade. And we had, at that point in time, we had a bunch of trees out there that have since been torn down for a new building to go up. But people liked it, and the windbreak. So if it was cold, we had Cousin's Maine lobster, and that's really where it came from. The last Thursday before the Christmas of 18 or 19, whatever year. They all get this. I think I said 19 earlier. I guess that was 20. And they had made mention like, it keeps the wind off you. And it was like, okay, like we need more outdoor seating when we have big events, so I can do tents. And then like if we do this, it gives us some wind breaks. And then, like I said, when COVID happened, it was just like, cool, we look like the smart people.
Yeah, we had heaters, we had sides on the tents that had windows. We've since even upgraded those to larger window panels. But you could sit outside on the coldest day and be like, take your jacket off and sit in one of those tents, have it zipped up and enjoy beers. And we sit on half an acre, so we're lucky enough, we're fortunate that we have that outdoor space because that really did help us when people were first coming back into
that was everything.
Drink. It was everything. I mean, I remember the first day bartending here when we were able to reopen, and it was terrible. Like it was not an exciting day. It was a very weird, bad day. And I remember 4 people sitting at this one table here. I think we had 18 seats in here, and that was it. We did have seating outside, but I just remember 2 people came and sat, 2 other people came and met them, and they each had one 12-ounce beer for the 4-hour time span that they were here. And my anxiety was terrible at that point in time. And I mean, everyone's probably was, but I already probably had anxiety that I was not dealing with. So those people sitting here, it was like they're literally just taking a table for hours where other people come in and they want to drink and they don't want to be that close. Just our tap room is so small, so the beer garden absolutely helped us. But it definitely took a while before it was like, oh good, this is good that people are allowed in here again. Like I remember after that first day we were like, no, let's go back to slinging cans in the weird fucking world that we were forced into for a while. People
for months would come in and say, they loosen it up, or things getting better. In all actuality, each time they loosened up something, we actually lost a little business. Because we were able to be open, we had the outdoor space to where like our friends at Maple Street were not able to be open for a long time, and so we got some of their customers. There was other places that just didn't open up, and then people not traveling. So like it was great for us to where this year we'll be back kind of at those numbers, but really last year was a dip down for us because everywhere was open the previous year. This is the first year that we've been open that actually goes back to year one of, okay, we were open this point in time, year one, and then this, with no restrictions.
Yeah, we
So
still
still learn everything.
We don't have any comparative
Yeah.
data that makes any sense.
Yeah, there was something around the holiday. I think it was like Memorial Day weekend, or like kids getting out of school, and someone said something. I was like, I don't know. This is the first year that someone's known us, and we haven't had restrictions. They just looked and was like, I guess you're right. I was like, yeah, we have no idea.
Yeah. Or it was the first year, or the first 8 months before the pandemic, and it was still people discovering us, and things were growing at that point. So we were fortunate that we were open for those months before, because we had regular customers who knew about us and wanted, felt some sense of, I want to see you guys here, and we want to have some part in that. So,
Are there changes y'all made during that time period, kind of unexpected changes that you've kept?
yeah, there are probably a lot. We did have some like lounge seating, a little comfy seating area that we did away with because we had already maximized every square inch of this space because it is a small space to begin with. But there were things that we said, no, we don't want to go back to this one thing. We replaced it with a shorter table, and it feels like a little alcove area because some of the plant shop plants separate it. And, if I'm back there doing taxes, people walk in and be like, oh, you're in your office.
Cans are one thing that we changed. So we went to an automatic canning line, or semi-automatic, whatever you want to call it. But the sales of cans and the pushing of cans and the easily upsell of cans, we've stuck with. That wasn't always necessarily part of the plan. Like,
people came in here to drink more than they came in to buy to-go beer, and now that's different.
And also, the industry itself, COVID killed barrel-aged sour beers. That's the biggest change. Our taproom manager here is a longtime friend of ours and worked for a place that did that pretty much solely, but through conversations with him and some of his other friends, like that's the biggest change that for us we realized, where it's like, okay, people don't want these beers. They don't want to, like, they'll occasionally drink them, but they don't want them for whatever reason. And like the bigger bottle format that used to be in every bottle shop, no, people just want cans. People are used to cans because that's what they got used to during the pandemic, and that's what you have to focus on. So that's probably the biggest shift that we've kind of knowingly, not knowingly we always, it's not we chase trends, we try to be with the trend, not necessarily a trendsetter, but like be on the pulse of what our customer wants and what the industry wants. I think is the biggest change, and we started doing spontaneous beers during that time frame that we've continued and we will continue to do instead of our barrel-aged sours. But I think that's
there are little things too. Like we have the potato chips that were on the bar top that I was like, great, we're gonna lose our asses on. Like, I mean, they're potato chips, but like every dollar at that point counted. And
that people just would buy anything they could get their hands on.
People would buy,
not from us. Like if they could get food and not go to the grocery store, they were getting food and not going to the grocery store.
And it was part of, okay, I'll help you. Like there were many different.
Yeah, we display them now. We didn't before because. So those sales have stayed up because of that. Because we were like, we just don't like clean liquor. It's like, no, we need to do something about this. Like, so they're blatantly out there now versus hiding in a cool little shelf, hidden away that we open up the cabinet and give it out. But I think that's really.
I mean, the beer garden changed. Like a lot of that growth remained and stuff. Like there were plenty of things that we built or incorporated during the pandemic that have stayed because it makes no sense.
A lot of that was just like normal growth stuff that, like, if you would have told me when we opened the brewery that we would have expanded our tanks the way we did because we built to grow into the brewery, I'd have said, no, we're not going to be there. And it's not necessarily that we need those tanks, it's we're being prepared to need those tanks. So we're trying to proactively do it ahead of needing them, that the pandemic actually afforded us to be able to do. Hopefully we don't have to buy any tanks ever again. Except for that one we may have put in Greensboro to get the permit today. We'll figure it out.
Speaking of Greensboro.
Segue.
Talk about, I know, exactly. It was a perfect segue, actually. So telling me a little bit about the decision to open a second location and then how you picked the spot in Greensboro.
We knew that our growth, we knew that we wanted to stay small. We both worked for big companies. I worked for a brewery that got bought out by Anheuser-Busch, and I am very thankful that I had that experience. They'll see it. They do watch me sometimes. But hashtag hops are not a desk plant. But I worked for them and learned a lot about, I learned some very good things, and I learned a lot about what I do not want to do, how I don't want to treat our people, how you can have a valuable asset in a person, how they're your most valuable asset to your brand. And if you don't take care of them, and if it's not even not taking care of them, if you take advantage of them, I just learned a lot about what I didn't want to do there. And I brought a lot of valuable tools in going through that experience with me to do what we're doing here. But with that being said, we always knew that we did not want to grow to be some big company. I don't think there's a place for that, and there's not a place for regional brewers or anything in the industry anymore. The future is small tap rooms that don't maybe have a ton of points of distribution, that just have secondary and tertiary and continuous tap rooms, and then, you know, expand on that brand and maybe do offshoots of that brand. And that's what we wanted to do. It is also strategically written into our operating agreement that it would never ever happen, but if Anheuser-Busch were to walk in the door tomorrow and be like, here's a bunch of money, and if it would be tempting to Ben, it would be tempting to a lot of people. No.
You have a magic number?
The magic number right now is
Shoot low. Shoot low.
I mean, it'll be higher once Greensboro.
Yeah.
We'll go to 3.
Yeah, we'll go to 3. But we made it contractually so that if Ben were to see a bunch of money and say, yeah, no, I think we need to do this, we need
you to say yes. That's
me to
what it
say
says.
yes. That's what it says.
That's what it says.
Thank you, lawyers.
Remind me, I came up with a T-shirt I did.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll
There's no
remind you.
piece of paper. I was like, where's a piece of paper? Write it down. Like,
Yeah. But the growth that we wanted to have was growing the brand that we already have, which is like we wanted it to feel like a neighborhood spot with excellent beer. Our thing now is we kind of say a local spot with national reach. So sometimes we get some notoriety that's outside of us. We are one of the top 5 breweries per Untapped ratings in the state of North Carolina, and I think there are 350 to 400 breweries now. And
Every day there's a new one.
68 according to
368,
Brew Stars, I think.
according to them. That
Brewery
those
Stars.
people
Brewery Stars.
Yeah, but we brew really great beer that we're proud of. We know that it's not just an offering for where we are. Graham will always be the heart of things, but we knew that we wanted to grow. We built our system to grow. Some people will come in and say, oh, how are you going to produce enough for that next tap room? We're not dumb. We were not born yesterday.
Yeah, we don't do any distro. We would much rather make a lot less beer, work a lot more behind the bar, and make a higher profit margin, because then we can make sure the beer is the level we want.
Yeah.
So as we looked at locations, Greensboro was a big spot because we're across town. So we're close enough to Greensboro, most people don't want to drive over here. It's like driving across town. It's like, I'm not driving there, it's across town. But people from Winston will drive over, people from Raleigh-Durham will come up. Also, Raleigh-Durham's more expensive than Greensboro. In my head, I looked at other places down the 85 corridor toward Charlotte. We've looked in some small towns, and those still aren't off the plate as different concepts. But Greensboro for us, just like, it's kind of where we also started and really fell in love with North Carolina beer scene.
Yeah.
At like Beer Co. It's the first place we ever gave away beer. We'll be within 20 minutes of both spots that we sold the first 2 kegs to. So one's the dollar and then one's the keg collar from those locations. And we just felt that that area could use another place. We of course wanted to go downtown and look some places, had a place kind of get leased out from under us. which is probably the only one that I still shake my head and like, that'd have been a good spot. That would have been the spot. I mean, where we're at is definitely
Where we're at is the best.
Is probably the best, but that's the one where it's not like
Yeah,
we
it's
had
one we would
second
still look
guesses.
at if it were to pop
Yeah,
up.
if it popped up tomorrow, I'd be like,
We'd look at it for something.
I know what I'm putting in there. So yeah. But,
Well, and y'all are going to be up on the Lake Jeanette side
Yeah.
of town,
Yeah.
and pretty much the only brewery on that side of town,
Yes.
which is not
Yeah.
a bad thing. What, like, after downtown got nixed, at least for that reason, what led you up to Lake Jeanette?
actually, we had our lease redlined and was about to sign it downtown.
For a different spot.
Yeah, and I just something didn't click right with me. I just wasn't comfortable with it, so I just pulled up, sitting behind the bar, retail places in Greensboro, and stumbled upon the Village in North Elm, where we now are putting our second tap room. I was looking at another location because I was like, there's nothing been in there. Like this will save a lot of construction costs. And then through looking at that, they wanted to show us another place, and then it was like, what's this? Like that's a bar right there. Like, what is this? It was an old ice cream shop, and then that of course became our spot. So once I looked at it, I drove past. I don't even think I'd talked to the real estate agent yet. I told her, I said, there's still places out there that I think we can get into at a better cost, fit the need that we want to better, because the concept would have worked downtown that we had come up with. It just the parking and everything else. In hindsight, we might look and been like, that could have been super successful, but the headache and everything still probably wouldn't have been worth it. So once we realized there were still areas out there, it was like, no, let's walk away from this. Like, I don't care if we got to pay our lawyers money.
Yeah, we had some
like,
money
let's just walk away
sank
from it.
into it, but it just ended up not being the right thing. Like we were almost there, and it was no, this isn't right. Let's walk away.
So
Yeah.
that's how we ended up doing it.
Yeah. It's a nice part of town. I enjoy that
yeah.
part of
Yeah.
town. So, Janee, you mentioned a while ago when we were talking about the mission that like working with the community is an important thing. Can you talk about some of the community engagement, collaboration types of things y'all have done?
Yeah, before we even opened, I know Ben looked at me. Ben is an extroverted introvert, and I'm an extroverted extrovert probably. And although I do like to sit at home and chill by myself sometimes, peopling can get exhausting. But Ben looked at me one point and was like, you're going to have to be the person that like just does a bunch of other weird things with the city and tries to get things to where they need to be. And I was like, yeah, have you met me? Obviously, that's going to be me. So I think part of the community outreach that we do is Graham is such a different space. It really, 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 truly is. And that night that we fell in love with Graham was not just, oh, we like this place, this will do. There was something else here that existed that I've never quite been able to pinpoint that other places just didn't quite have. I think there's a collective energy around here of people that want to do good things and people that want to see Graham be everything that it can be or should be. And I think that I'm part of that glue that exists or maybe magnetizes people to try to get good people to come in here and do fun, exciting things. But some of the community outreach that we did was, there were things as simple as like changing ordinances to make things a little bit more friendly. So food trucks were not allowed on private property in Graham right before we opened. So thankfully I went to city council and was not alone, but helped push for there to be food trucks allowed here, which is a big part of our business and people love it.
The second bar crawl was convenient involvement because the city reached out and asked if we would do a St. Patty's Day bar crawl.
So I planned the first bar crawl. So Graham is also unique in that there are now 7 bars within a 2-block radius of each other that are all very, very unique. So We are the brewery with the giant beer garden. There is Little Brother Brewing Barrel and Bottle that is a tap room and a music venue. There's Hi-Fi Records that they're a bar that they sell old records and have like your mom's living room from like the 80s kind of vibe. There is Powercade, which is a barcade. There's Fitzgerald and Faulkner, which is a craft cocktail haunt that, you know, kind of sits sneakily above the Press Coffee Shop, where you have to walk upstairs to go into this really cool spot. There's Maple Street Tavern, which is the awesome dive bar and music venue. And then Little Oblivion just came into town.
They're the new brewery.
They're the new brewery. They're the new brewery. But those bars all exist within a 2-block radius of each other. And before Little Oblivion was here, and then at one point Little Brother was the second location for Beer Co. But we just had all these bars and we had this energy that was going, and we needed for people to kind of see it. So one of our regular customers said, why aren't you guys doing a bar crawl? You guys should do a bar crawl. And I was like, cool, help me do a bar crawl. So we did that. And that was the day that we got murdered, and there was a line out the door, just the two of us behind the bar. I made the dumb decision of using glassware. Never ever again, plastic cups always.
Yeah, so
but that's a long story.
We've done collaboration beers with groups. Our most recent one with the Reverend Warriors, we did 2 beers for the Greensboro Sophie's Hike. So they're a group that through humor and camaraderie prevent suicide. We've done, during the pandemic, we did All Together, which was a service industry beer. So it was a natural kind of collaboration. So that we donated some money and tried to draw some attention. I think that was one of the days we had another bartender in here from one of the other places. The Love Graham Festival was a big thing that got canceled the week that we got shut down. So we did a beer for that, and that was to help local artists.
That was another thing that
draw people.
A friend of mine had planned the Love Graham Festival the year prior and had a picture in her head of what she wanted it to be, and everyone still talks about that and how great it was. And I was just a small part of that as like a vendor and helped out a tiny bit with some other stuff that was minuscule. But that was a big thing that was planned that the city wanted us to do again, and we were working to make that happen. And it was the founder of the festival, myself, and then Molly Feudale, who owns Color My Monday and whose partner owns Hi-Fi Records. But we were working to put on this festival to bring a bunch of people to Graham, and we made the decision right before we would have had our hand forced to do so that, you know, the festival wasn't going to happen. But some of the festivals downtown here, they're just community outreach. It's stuff that makes, you know, we do a lot of things to help veteran organizations or to help, you know, like we do stuff with the Pink Boot Society to help women in the fermented beverage industry. But the community was something that we knew would carry us and was so important to us. So some of the downtown festivals like Dino Day Fest was a thing that came out of Ben's head that I had to turn into a festival, along with the help of Josh from Little Brother. We have Grahamtoberfest, which is a Josh festival that we help out with. But there are a lot of downtown events that now happen and good things that happen in the city. And I sometimes it's just remarkable. I remember the day after the first bar crawl, I was shopping for something for Mac, our brew dog, before we got him. And I went into this little pet store, and someone in there in like Raleigh or Durham had been in downtown Graham for the bar crawl or for the bar crawl. And I was like, you were in Graham for it? And they were like, yeah, it was amazing. And because they saw I had a Forgotten Rodale sweater, and they were like, oh, this is the first time I was in there. And I just was like, what is this? Like, what just happened here? And there is kind of like this weird magic that exists because there are good people that make it happen. And then there are people that want to come to our weird shit, like fucking Dino Day Fest that we, National Dinosaur Day is the first week in June. And we were like, wouldn't it be cool if there were, as a dinosaur bar crawl was Ben's first idea. And then it turned into, no, let's make it a festival. So then we buy a gigantic 15-foot tall, 30-foot wide inflatable T-Rex. That's an asset I didn't think we would ever purchase as a brewery. But We had a logo done with our brew dogs dressed as dinosaurs. Of course, Mac was a T-Rex because he's the boss of everything. And then Little Biscuit was the fucking Triceratops. She's a little potato dog. But we just do things that we feel like the community can come together around.
We've had some politicians here to do some meet and greets around city council.
Without being, we don't politically brand ourselves at all.
But, well, I mean, this past year we had one that just asked if they could do something out here. And we didn't even advertise it. It was just, hey, can we use your place? We're gonna have some people gonna meet up to do like a little town hall. We're like, yeah, like by all means.
Organize the thing before, so there was a downtown area plan, which sounds very boring, but I was super, super passionate about it, and there were plenty of people that were people that kind of wanted to stop it, but it was progress in downtown Graham, changing things and making things safer for the community with like sidewalks and streets and some of the infrastructure needed to be updated. There were a lot of really cool things that would have happened. That did get passed, but then the changing of the guards made it so that there's no progress on that project that the council had elected to pass. But there were little things like that were important to the community, or things that were being projected to the community that were misinformation, like, oh, there's not enough parking downtown. If we do this, it'll take away from our parking. When there are 5 city lots within a block and a half from us, that the maximum capacity that any of them ever retains is 40% fill for parking, so there's plenty of parking. Also, I got street parking passed at City Council for the street behind us. There's plenty of parking here, but that's a little island on all of its own. But there are things that, like, we're very involved in the community here. It's something that we're both passionate about, and at times have spent too much of our energy focusing on, but now it's at a more healthy place where we're at a better place. We have bartenders and we can kind of focus on some community outreach.
And I think now we're more excited than ever to be able to do more because, one, we have the funds because of the 2 tap rooms, and then we have the staffing, and we don't have restrictions.
Well, speaking of staffing, what you talked about it being the 2 of you at the start, what are you up to in terms of staffing these days?
Technically 5.
Yeah.
So 5 and a permanent intern.
Ruben's the permanent intern who gets paid in free beer for the rest of his life because he helped us so much. Oh, not free beer for the rest of his life. He doesn't work for free beer.
Yeah, so we have 5. So we have 2 tap room managers and then 2 part-time going to full-time bartenders, and we'll probably hire another 1 or 2 bartenders, maybe even some cellar staff, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and that, again, you did another perfect segue into what I was going to ask next, which is, I guess this sounds silly, but aside from an entirely new space in Greensboro, what other changes do you see coming in the future or hope to see coming in the future?
For the brewery, it'll probably just be continuing to build the brand. We'll probably roll out another brand in the next 12 months that we wanted to roll out 3 years ago, but we won't even roll it out that way. It's just one of those where it's like, this has been there, and it's like, hey, here's our opportunity to do it, and that'll be kind of around some spontaneous beers and probably like some oak age lagers, because we don't currently make any lagers. And it's one of those, like, we talked a little bit about doing it in Greensboro, and we're like, let's not do that. So that'll probably roll out. There may be a little bit of a dive bar concept from us.
That's more craft oriented.
From the brewery, the modern day dive bar is what I like to call it. Because she got the Greensboro tap room, I get the next.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Well, she got to steer that. I get to steer the next one.
No, it's not.
It sounds like she may be the dive bar expert.
Yeah, this is true.
She's expert in everything.
Fuck you.
Don't take that compliment.
It's not a bad. It's good that he recognizes that.
That's kind of like the growth. We'll continue to do some of our kind of collabs with some nonprofits and pushing that, and we'll get back to focusing a little bit more around some like veterans nights and some stuff like that.
We had those before the pandemic. It was the first Monday of every month or whatever it was. So we weren't open on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, but the first Monday of every month was something, the second Tuesday was something, and the third Wednesday was something. We had a dog social one of the nights. We did Veterans Night the one night, and I forget what else we did. Is it Sip and Paint? Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, weirdly enough, one thing we haven't talked a lot about is beer. So tell me a little bit about what you've got here, the production size, what you typically, I mean, as you said before, there is no typical because of craziness, but what's our capacity here?
So without oak, we can produce just over 600 barrels a year, which when you sell it all in-house in small towns, that's still a lot. So we have a 5-barrel system with an oversized mash tun. It's an American-made system from Bridgetown, out in Oregon. Outside Washington.
Yeah. Portland, near Portland.
Yeah, just outside of Portland. So with that system, we can kind of actually brew 7-barrel batches, or we can brew 4-barrel batches of a really big beer. So it's kind of nice. So then we have a handful of 10-barrel tanks that we've purchased over the past 18 months, and then some 5-barrel tanks and a couple 3.5-barrel tanks that we'll do like split batches into. One of those is currently on loan to another brewery because we don't actually have space for it here. And then we do a whole lot of oak age. So I think we currently have 65 barrels, which is 5 more barrels than we should have. And we are looking at some barrel space, so we'll see if we can't make that happen. Not that we necessarily need it, it's just we want it.
Yeah, Ben keeps buying barrels, and I don't have a place to put them anymore, so.
So that's kind of the setup. We have another like mixing tank for all of our sour stuff. So we do produce sour and clean beers in the same place. So we have a bunch of extra hoses for all that, a bunch of extra equipment for all that. Well, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have a beer that you consider to be your flagship beer?
We still avoid using the word flagship, even though the pandemic kind of brought flagships back.
For us, at least.
Well, for a lot of breweries, people went to Old Faithful, but our Recruit, which was our blonde ale, so we made during the pandemic because we wanted to have a light beer, and our Call Sign Citrus Sunshine, which is a 6.7% hazy IPA, are the two that are constantly in a tank. So we do all we can to have those on, and that's a little purpose driven, and some of that is also that's what our consumer wants.
Yeah. We run out of cans of them. People are like, when is it coming back? Or like, it's gone for even less than a week, and people are like, oh, what am I going to get instead of Citrus Sunshine? And it's good. Sometimes we let them fall off a little bit on purpose to say, let's try to nudge someone who is a drinker of the Recruit, which is our blonde ale, into Hardin Street Ale, which is our cream ale, which is even more crushable, but less popular here. But those are the two that we sell the most of, and the blonde ale was something that really blew us away. We really thought it would be an offering on tap. It would be we have 12 taps right now. We're going to expand that shortly, but we have I thought it would be 11th or 12th place in sales, and it's always in the top 3 every single week, every single month. Top 3 in sales is our blonde ale.
Yeah, we focus more on styles than we do
one specific
beer.
Yeah.
So like we typically have a couple IPAs on, a couple sours. And those sours could be our stainless steel sours that are a little more fruited, or it could be a sour IPA, it could be a barrel-aged sour, it could be a handful of things. And then typically we try to have like one of our barrel-aged saisons on, or farmhouse beers, one of our barrel-aged either stouts or barley wines on, so like our clean side, and then a stout, basically something dark, something kind of amberish, light brownish, and then now we just keep Recruit on. So.
Yeah, and a barrel-aged imperial something. Oh, okay, I missed that. I blacked out during that.
It's an important one to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the shot actually has your medal in it. Tell Tell me a little bit about the medal that you have hanging behind you.
So I'm not a big fan of awards, but I know how.
But
it helps.
unfortunately, you won one.
But I know how it helps
Sadly.
in marketing. I mean, it helped us. I used to enter homebrew competitions, and it was more to get a blind input from someone. And we won some awards, especially our pumpkin beer that we still make, and we're making like 2 weeks actually. But that one is our U.S. Open Beer Cup. So we won gold in
Fruited
sour-
Goza.
Fruited Goza, yeah, Fruited Goza. So it's our Lime Day Patrol. So it's 6.2. Nice tart, refreshing, crushable in summertime. A little sour, not sour.
Brewed with lime and pink Himalayan sea salt.
So yeah.
Oh,
And then like we've done a couple other ones like that one. I think we forgot to enter last year.
It originally was our Cinco de Mayo beer. Like it was,
Oh, yeah,
it was
it was
a
a-
one-time-a-year
Cool.
release, and then Ben, as soon as it won gold, he's like, "Shit, I have to brew this
Yeah.
right again," because we had just like sold out of draft in the tap room, and we had some cans left. And I was like, "Well, better get to brewing that one." So
is it
just-
one that you're still brewing and
Yeah,
keeping
he
on?
just-
We just brewed it, but
Just
I
brewed
like
it.
doing it once a year because I always like changing
It'll
up
stay
a little
once a
bit
year,
things.
probably.
Yeah.
And I had to be like, keep cans. I don't remember how much lime was in this because sometimes I write it down, sometimes I don't. Because it's one of those where it's like, okay, it's annual. What have I learned year to year? Like if I found a better lime, or something like that. So sometimes they tweak a little bit. And that one, I was like, oh shit, go figure. I mean, it's always been good, but it's one of those like dialing in the lime, dialing in the salt. Where we do it once a year. It's like, all right, we'll get it. And then when I remember it, I'll eventually write it down.
Maybe.
So, yeah. I mean, the base
You
beer,
can just
the
keep
base
tweaking
beer's
it.
written down. It's just lime to flavor
Yeah.
or lime to taste. So.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's how people cook. Why not how
Yeah.
Exactly.
brewing works too? So thinking broadly about the beer industry, do you have predictions for where you see the industry as a whole going over the next 5 years? You mentioned that y'all like to stay with trends, and
Yeah. So there had been talk, and I don't hear it thrown around as much anymore, about the bubble, the craft beer bubble. I don't think that that's a thing. I think that really evolution is taking place. So there may be a lot of breweries that are opening now, and there is a place for all of it. If there are places for other bars that just sell that beer that breweries make, there are places for us. There aren't places for regional brewers. There, you know, I hope that no one would be sitting there writing that as their plan. But really, I just think the trend will continue to evolve. I think it's evolution. I think it's the best will survive. The ones with the best beer, the best business plan, the best location has something to do with it. You know, the best mindset on who they are as, you know, if someone does want to distro, what healthy distro looks like now is not what it looked like 2 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago. So I think the future really is comparable to what we're doing, where we're the small local spot and we brew really good beer. We're not going anywhere. There will be other places that come and go because they choose a bad location and maybe they have great beer. I think you really just have to be more hyper-focused on the local spot, I think, is the future of craft beer. And some notoriety doesn't hurt things either. Maybe some points of distro, but I don't think big production breweries really have as much of a place. And just people relate, the same thing with our logo, people relate more to stories. They relate to something that, you know, we could have an American flag and a fucking eagle and a hop cone in our logo. And, you know, some people will be like, great, yeah, okay, write that down. But that's not us. You know, people come in and they say, what's this about? And they hear it, and you can see people's faces kind of like light up as they're engaging. And it's not just, you know, we opened this place and we called it this, and here's our beer, and, you know, shit we didn't think about. We thought about a lot of things. So I think storytelling is important in beer, and I think it will become more valuable as more consumers enter the age of being able to drink and go to bars, they're more conscious of where they're spending their money, what they're spending it on. So, one of the things that I'll tell people when they come in and they're like, where else can I get your beer, is we kind of like to force people to come in here and hear our shitty stories and talk to the people that make it. So I think if you can retain some sense of that and you have a valuable story, you have good beer, a combination of those things, that I think that's really the recipe for success. And I think in the future you'll see some of those brands that just don't have a great location or don't have the right product mix, really, as far as like not just product mix, but in a sense of beer, location, branding, and all of those things. Like you'll see smarter people sticking around with better beer, and I think it'll just help the industry overall. There's not going to be as much like, this is what I think an IPA is, and you've never had a good IPA. So that's what I think.
I think broader menus and higher quality beer are going to be the biggest things.
Yeah.
Because there's too many out there. There's too many choices. The consumer is going to take the best. But other than that, I think all the trends are going to continue. Steve's trying to get going to continue. Of less lines, more retail, continuing of cans, less breweries completely focused on one thing. So
Yeah. Well, and I think it ties in too with what you were saying earlier about like the importance of hospitality, and when you're focusing on space, that becomes as important sometimes, if not more so, sometimes than the beer.
There are spaces that we like to go to and hang out at that maybe don't have the best drinks, or there are spaces that we love to go to because the drinks are great and the space might be lacking a bit. But if you really have that product mix, I think that's just like not the golden ticket, because that doesn't exist, but that's the best that you can hope for. And what evolution naturally will do is to seed out the people that don't have all of those things kind of put together in a package or figured out, or
Yeah. So thinking of your beers here, what are your personal favorites that you've brewed here?
what do I need
Choose
to
a
sell?
child.
What do I need to sell? There's a trick to that. When you ask me my favorite beer and I'm the bartender, it's whatever beer I need to get rid of.
Now, I'm the salesperson, and somehow he picked up that.
So I drink the Recruit a bunch, just because I'm always trying different stuff. And I may answer a question that you're already about to ask. I think what I'm most looking forward to is our spontaneous beers. And trying some of those. But I typically don't put out beer I don't like.
We don't. Well, unless he doesn't like a style.
Yeah,
It's
there's certain
always
styles
good.
and flavors where I'm like, I hate this, but
Yeah.
is it good? Like, you tell me. But being able to produce a light beer consistently that really most people will enjoy, or like our big craft people still rotate into their drinking while they're here, is good enough for me. So.
Yeah.
The first beer I typically order when I go somewhere is...
Sit here. Here.
It's my story. You let me be the long-winded person.
She'll get to praising your beer in a minute.
Yeah. I'll get to kissing your butt because you brew really good fucking beer. The first beer I usually order when I go in somewhere is a New England IPA, and Call Sign Citrus Sunshine is stellar. It's I can't even, you need to try it. It's like the corn kid on TikTok.
This is going to be.
People are going to.
I was going to say that's a reference that we'll have to put an explanation
totally.
in a few
People
years.
are going to Google like, what the fuck is the corn kid on TikTok? There'll be 7 more corn kids in years to come. So this is going in historical archives. You're welcome for the rabbit hole that just sent you down. But yeah, Call Sign Citrus Sunshine. Mac Attack is a triple IPA that we brew once a year for my Brewdog's birthday weekend extravaganza, which is a 3-day event with beers featuring him on the label, and it's a stellar triple IPA. I had another one of our IPAs that I love that I can't recall in my head. because Ben brews so many that are really, really awesome. But those are excellent. The M3rd 25th Barrel Aged Imperial Stout, Ben kills a barrel aged beer with high gravity. I think the beer that probably we should be most proud of is February Drill, which is a barrel aged barley wine, and it's just everything. But it's my favorite of the ones I've had from here. Those are my favorites. Some of his best barrel aged imperial stouts, barrel aged barley wine, and then the New Englands, which he knocks out of the park. But there are so many others that I'm so proud of, and the Recruit, I'm really proud of that beer too. And I had nothing to do with it aside from saying we need a beer that people can drink, and Ben just killed it. So, but if I had to pick one that was a desert island beer, it'd be Call Sign Citrus Sunshine.
It's a good beach beer.
Yes.
So how about other beers? Do you have beers from other North Carolina breweries that you particularly like these days?
North Carolina.
Ben, your new.
I was like ready, and I was like, oh man.
You're gonna go overseas, weren't you?
You were gonna go He was gonna go New Belgium, and they have a brewery in North Carolina.
So, yeah, but they're not from North Carolina. I think Burial makes some fantastic lagers. Zillicola, their lagers are awesome.
So good.
Resident Culture did a Brett barrel aged lager that was awesome. And Fonta Flora, their Rhythm Rug is probably the best strawberry beer I've ever had in my life.
Agree with that.
Casitas producing some awesome stuff that I'm really enjoying. I also love hanging out with them. Percent, they're some good friends of ours, and Neil,
they're magicians.
I love working with them because it's just like, what do you think of it? And it's like, all right, cool, like, yeah, that'll work. Like, how do I make a beer blue? Here's 30 ideas. But he's producing some super solid lagers, some awesome hazies, some really weird seltzers, but they're good. And I don't drink them.
Yeah.
My answer is Call Sign Citrus Sunshine. There are definitely a lot of great breweries in this state, and I don't have one beer that's my solid go-to. But if I see, a can or draft by Burial somewhere, by Resident Culture, by Hopfly, by Percent Tap House, Casita, I know that I'm missing some that are also stellar that are out there. But those are some of my go-tos that I'm like, this is not going to be bad. I'm really going to be happy with
I'm
this.
going to get a Casita West Coast later today.
Well, and the last thing I wanted to ask you about, because it's one of the first things I noticed when I walked in, are the plants.
I was like, no, that's a cool shit.
You can talk about that if you want, but tell me about the plants and the plant business.
So it was Ampersand Plants is a second business that we have that was born from my not so in the off distant future love of houseplants. So right when we opened the doors of Forgotten Road Ales, a friend had gifted me a Monstera that was rooted, a Monstera deliciosa that was rooted, that he grew, and he took a cutting from his plant.
He was also one of the bartenders that we were talking to at Fitz and
I was getting there. It goes full
I was
circle.
like, wait a second.
Yeah. So he was actually the guy when we went to Fitz and Faulkner that was sitting at the bar. That night we fell in love with Graham. He's the one who was sitting at the bar that was like, hey, my friend's coming here. You guys need to talk to her. Like, you guys brew great beer. We need you here. So it is kind of cool how full circle some of those things do come. But he had gifted me with this Monstera deliciosa. Prior to that, every year, I had a bowl that I would buy succulents for, and I would make an arrangement to put on our kitchen table. Come July, Ben would say, Janee, why is there a moldy bowl of dirt still on the kitchen table? So I thought I had a black thumb. I had thought that was a thing, and I'm just not meant to keep houseplants. I get this Monstera. I really, really love it. I actually have pictures of like Monstera that I took in Hawaii framed in my house. It's a plant I've always loved. And I was like, I'm going to learn how to take care of this so this doesn't die. Thankfully, it's a very resilient house plant for starters, so any mistakes you're going to make, you're not going to kill it so easily. And I just really grew to love that plant and quickly learned and texted my friend who gave it to me the one day, and I was like, hey, I can cut this and make a new plant, right? Yeah, that's all I did with mine. And I did it, and I was addicted. Then I got into rare house plants, which are kind of one of the things that ampersand plants, it's one of the things that makes us unique, but I'll get to that. So I would buy these rare house plants, and Ben would be like, you spent what on this cutting of a plant? And I'd say, yeah, but I can just turn around and take a cutting from it in 4 months and sell it for that exact same amount of money. He was like, what? Maybe we're getting somewhere with this. So we would have plants sitting on the bar top, just naturally because I just was more into house plants. People would sit at the bar and they'd be like, oh, this is a cool plant, what is it? And I would get to talking to them about it. So when Ben and I were talking about adding this business to the Forgotten Rodale's tap room, I thought, well, what is it that makes us unique? And really what it is it's the fact that it's an add-on that makes us unique. It's the fact that I thought I had a black thumb, and thankfully I was shown otherwise. And people will come in here, and the difference is there are people that don't want to go shop for plants that come in here. They'll sit at the bar, they'll talk to me about that's a cool plant, and I'll say that's a piece of cake. Even Ben knows today what plant to direct people to that they're like, what can I kill? He'll be like, snake plant over there, this one over there. He'll make up names for a plant and call it a flat pickle, which is not a thing. But it's a flat cactus, Opuntia cactus. But it just got to be a thing that it made sense to have here, because plants also, to go off on another tangent, during the pandemic, and somewhat after it, I was listening to some podcasts, and some of them on like mental health and things that you can do to like improve your mental health. I was listening to plant podcasts too, because we were preparing to open ampersand plants, and there was a podcast that I listened to that said something about restorative therapies, and people during the pandemic were purchasing tons of houseplants because they weren't leaving their house. So it's a place for them to feel connected to nature and not have to really be outside. You also have something to care for, so there's the value in that. So I think it kind of does come full circle as far as what we like to do at the bar, which is hopefully people leave here like having tasted a good beer at worst, but hopefully they leave here with a little bit more that says, like, I went into this place and there's something about it there that I really liked, or like I learned something, or I felt good in that space. You know, we'll talk to people about mental health here, and it just kind of comes full circle. So ampersand just means and I'm an English nerd, and you know, was going to go to school for journalism at one point, and it made sense that it's just an add-on to Forgotten Rodale's. So our second tap room that will open in Greensboro will also have ampersand plants there, and I just love that we have rare house plants. I have a house plant here that's like over $400 that people will buy, and that I grew myself. But I love that people can come in here and kind of learn about that stuff too, and you know, hopefully we're giving people more than just beer, or we're always kind of trying to grow. So it's beer, or it's good words that make their day, or it's just we're more than a brewery, or I don't know. I think it's kind of, it helps things come full circle. The ampersand plants addition does. Not only does it look really cool in here, but you know, people come in here and, oh, you guys sell these? I see prices on them. And they take a little piece home with them that I still have customers that'll message me pictures of their plants. I had someone the other day that was their first time in here, and they shot us a DM and they were like, we bought this plant and this is awesome and we'll be back. So giving people more reasons to come in here and have a good experience it's more than beer or plants. It's really more, it's about an experience and giving people something that's good and hopefully great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that is the end of my prepared questions. Is there anything we didn't talk about that y'all want to have included in the full story?
Yes. Our cool ship.
Yeah, I knew that was going to be it.
Someone's got to pay for my hobby.
It's the most exciting.
I think it's the neatest thing that we do that, like, we try to use like real fruit in a lot of things, in most everything. Occasionally we'll use a little bit of flavoring to make something pop. But I kind of have like guidelines for each area. But here with our beer garden, we're able to grow hops. We're able to grow some fruit, so we've got some berries out there. So we make our own version of lambics, to use that word, which is basically a spontaneous beer that for us we do 60% Carolina grown Pilsner malt and 40% Carolina grown raw wheat. So we do our own mash. We don't do a turbot mash that is very traditional. We do something kind of based off of that should do the same thing in my head in research. So we'll take that beer, we'll brew it, we do a long boil on it. We use hops that are grown here on the property that we age. We just did one harvest and we got a couple more vines out there we got to pull down and harvest this year. We don't age them for 3 years because we just leave them in a burlap sack 28 inches away from our boiler so that it's not in the storage space. But that's it. Like I listed something, it's like, oh, if you want to age them quickly, throw them in there. And I was like, well, Vinny from Russian River says this. It's a good idea. Let's do that. So we use those hops in that. We brew it. We throw it outside into our mobile cool ship that we designed that is just off a camera that sits on top of barrels, which in the wintertime there's a really big white spot there. During summertime it completely closes in.
Because it sits in our parking lot.
In a parking lot for
in the winter,
for the winter.
As Ben uses it constantly.
So we have a fan on it to help produce better airflow over it. We take those beers, put them into neutral oak barrels, ferment them in oak, and then this year will be season 3. So traditional goose is 3 years of spontaneous beers, which in turn you actually do after it's aged for a year. But hopefully this season we'll be able to do some fruited beers that we've gotten pawpaw, which are of course native to North Carolina. I think the only fruit actually native to North Carolina. It sucks to process, but it's pretty amazing. And then some scuppernauts and muscadines that hopefully this year we'll do some fruited beers with those. We'll do the natural carb, do the green bottles, all that fun stuff, just because it does add to the characters, I think, and the experience of drinking those beers. And then next year, hopefully, we'll do our version of a goose, a 3-year blend of that. And we do some of those in gin barrels, just because I like gin, and there's another producer, Cigar out west, that doesn't. I typically like those. And those we may do as like estate beers, where we use the berries from the property that we grow into those to do basically like an estate bramble with those. But those beers we'll do all we can to use every bit of North Carolina fruit in. Occasionally we may go to Virginia, being so close to Virginia, and I'm from Virginia. It's like, okay, it's a little asterisk that we're allowed to do. But yeah, that's what I think both of us really excited about.
And that's also Ben's happiest place. Like, there are days where he'll be in the brew house and, brewing is something that he loved. When you turn that into a job, it's not always constantly, oh, I love this so much. It can become a task, but the happiest that I see Ben is when he's out in the parking lot cracking beers with some of our regular customers at, dusk, and it's nighttime and there's a chill in the air outside, and the wort is coming into the cool ship, and he's just loving life. Like, it's his happiest place as a brewer.
Yeah, we designed the cool ship to be able to take, so we've taken it down to Charlotte a couple times, and we have multiple collabs down there. And this year should be interesting where we end up taking it. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right, I'm off.
But have you seen the cool ship?
Have you seen?
Well, we've got your happy place.
Is that a cool? People walk in and be like, is that a? Yes, that's a cool ship in North Carolina. We don't get a lot of days because it's We only brew typically into it on like Wednesdays because we're not crazy busy, and then that next morning I can fill the barrels. Really, we could probably do Thursday or Friday also, but it's, especially now where people are more used to it, but it's still super humid in here on those days, and the doors going up and down,
Yeah.
to try to keep the heat that's in the building, because we typically want it colder than 40 degrees outside on those nights. We do all we can to be as our modern take of their tradition. So
New t-shirt idea. Let me tell you about my cool ship.
I like that.
Write that down.
Get a picture of that drawn up. A couple plants hanging off of it.
Yeah.
Like a vine.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and now we have your new, marketing
Someone's
fund.
gonna steal
So,
that. Trademark.
TM. Anything else you guys can think of?
No.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for sitting down and
Thank
talking
you.
to us. We really appreciate it.